Order. Dr. Brown, would you like to lead us in the pledge? Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioners Brown? Present. Harris? Absent. Herr?
Present.
McCracken?
Present.
Harris? Absent. Vice Chair Little? Absent. Chairman Mercy?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Consent calendar. Do we have any corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, is there any objection to approving the consent calendar consisting of approval of the minutes? Hearing none, the consent calendar is approved. Commission staff presentations, updates, and reports. We're going to do this a little bit out of order. We're going to jump to our public safety update. And with that, we're going to start with Dr. Roger Gurian.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Roger Gurian. I'm a clinical psychologist on the medical staff at Antelope Valley Hospital. And speaking to Dr. Mark Brown about the idea of talking on the broken windows theory. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. In law enforcement, I'm a former reserve police officer with Pomona, and we were quite familiar with the broken windows theory. But the broken windows theory was started by a couple of sociologists in 1982, Wilson and Kettering, I think is his last name. But it basically goes like this, that in a neighborhood, if there's a broken window and it goes unnoticed, nobody bothers fixing it, it invites for more broken windows. Much like when someone litters in an area, people feel more free to just litter in that area. And so the sociologists apply this to many social trends. For example, if drugs are seen in an area and nothing is done to stop the drug use in that area, people take that as a license to use drugs in that area with impunity, basically. So you can see many applications of this in our society. The current model is that we don't arrest methamphetamine users. And they're often, in my experience, work the ER in Antelope Valley Hospital or Antelope Valley Medical Center. We would see meth users come in often and in a psychotic break. It's also interesting, parenthetically, that in research you use methamphetamine as a model for studying schizophrenia. That's because dopamine is used and is studied in both conditions, excessive flooding of dopamine in the brain. So what happens is we let methamphetamine users, there's no consequences legally anymore. And it's easier for us to treat them in the hospital and let them, get some referrals for substance abuse treatment, which they don't heed, they never listen, than to book them and leave them in jail. So what happens is it's now pretty ubiquitous methamphetamine use. The broken windows theory can also be applied to marijuana use. Everyone thinks that's pretty innocuous. Marijuana. In fact, we've legalized it in California. I remember when I was an officer in Pomona, we didn't know whether to arrest anybody anymore because marijuana is still federally it's still illegal, but in California it's legalized. So we were, which way do we go? So we think marijuana is pretty innocuous. However, now the latest studies are that adolescents who've used marijuana for several years, it doesn't even have to be daily, it can be 3 times a week. Their brain volume is literally less because our brains are developing until about the age of 26, but it literally arrests the physical development. Marijuana does. It arrests the physical development of the brain. A lot of people think marijuana is not physically addictive, and yet we see several cases a week in the ER where patients come in and they can't stop throwing up. Well, interestingly, that a lot of physicians will give marijuana to cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy because marijuana is a very effective antiemetic. It quells nausea. But if you smoke marijuana regularly, the antiemetic in your system forces the brain to produce an opponent process biochemically, an emetic. So if you all of a sudden you abruptly stop smoking marijuana, you're tossing your cookies. You cannot stop, and it's hard to stop unless you come in and get Zofran or some other treatment, anti-nausea medication. So there is a physical addiction to marijuana. Now, I'm not saying that tetrahydrocannabinol doesn't have some use. Marijuana has some good clinical usage, but my personal feeling is that we shouldn't have legalized it so easily, and it's probably best to be prescribed so that we can regulate the dosage. You don't really know how much you're getting on a regular basis. And oftentimes, it's laced with something, especially today. So the broken windows theory, to go back to that, is so applicable in so many ways, in that if we think it's something is so innocuous and so it's really no big deal, but one broken window unfortunately leads to another broken window into another broken window, and it's been the same with drug usage. So my recommendation is that we start re-examining our public recommendations of marijuana usage. And certainly, I think that methamphetamine usage ought to be criminalized, and then that can become a true pathway to force somebody into treatment. One of the reasons that we have to force somebody who's a methamphetamine user into treatment again is that we become literally physically addicted to methamphetamine. There's a little gland in the brain, which is the pleasure center of our brain. And it's called the nucleus accumbens, if anybody needs to know that. But that little nucleus accumbens swells up after regular usage in a short order, within a month. And it doesn't decrease in size again. It doesn't quit clamoring for regular usage of meth again for about a year. So if you don't abstain for a year after using meth for a while, you can't stop. It's going to keep demanding that you use meth again. So we have some hard choices to make in our society. Some colleagues and I were talking about centers where we have the courts would order treatment for meth addiction, and then they're ordered into treatment and rehab treatment, and they have to stay there in a controlled area where there's no drugs for about a minimum of 6 months, and then outpatient treatment subsequent to that. And then we stand a chance. But if you look at the number of homeless people frequently take methamphetamine to stay awake all night so that they don't fall prey to other homeless people, ripping them off. So it's a pretty ubiquitous problem, and it started with one broken window. So that's my take on it. Okay.
Oh, you're gonna hit your button so they can hear you.
Button.
Yeah.
Found the button.
Yeah.
What we see with these theft gangs, that is when you decriminalize essentially petty theft and no longer prosecute it, don't decriminalize it, but turn it to a misdemeanor so that it's basically free to do. You create these theft rings and this sort of sweeping the nation, this whole new way of approaching retail theft.
Yes, that's pretty ubiquitous. Not to mention the adrenaline rush of that kind of a theft. That's a real draw to doing it again and again, and getting away with it. Yeah. Any other statements or questions? Well, thanks for listening. Yeah,
Great,
thanks.
thank you. Okay, continuing on with, Public Safety Director or Public Safety Office?
Good morning, Commissioner and Chairman. I'm Christine Malta. I'm sitting here on behalf of Chief Armelin, who's currently out with the team serving a search warrant on an indoor illegal grow here in Lancaster. So he's asked me to provide his updates today. Last meeting, I guess it was asked that we provide some updates with homelessness. So we just want to share that last month we made 255 contacts. We do have a database that we're tracking information with our homeless people so that we can locate them, contact them, and see how many times we come across them. There was 71 tons of trash removed from encampments and 81 shopping carts recovered. From January to May, with regard to our drone, we had 82 deployments, 203 flights, and some of those were for the Sheriff's Department. In regards to, like you were talking about broken window theory, we've got 38 identified and open cases with houses in different stages of burnout. We are looking at, they're going through different stages of receivership, whether we can make insurance claims, working with the owners. We did have one that was demolished on June 10th. That's a chronic problem on 10th Street West and H11. And in regards to business licensing, in May, we identified 12 unlicensed businesses. We brought one into compliance, and we had 28 approved business licenses. So with regard to updates for the PD, we are currently processing our first group of 3 officers that we've hired. They're going through backgrounds now, and because we are being extremely selective, it's taking a little bit longer to ensure that we get the right candidate. Because the type of work that we'll be doing is very specialized, we're looking for specific people, and we are going through a lengthy process to make sure that we get the right candidates. We have reopened the position, and it's being posted as well on billboards in Santa Clarita, in the Valley, and along the freeways so that we can get people who are living up north and commuting down south to maybe be interested in what we're doing up here, since we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're slated to move into our station off of Sierra Highway on the week of July 8th. And the chief wants to invite anybody who would like to come and get a tour of the station. Go ahead and contact him, Assistant Chief Roberts, or any of the managers, which would be myself, Andrew Noga, or Tracy Stewart. We've got a ton of technology. We've got our Intelligence Crime Center. We'll be up and operational, and we're already working with homicide and gang detectives from the Sheriff's Department and other agencies who are asking for our help in identifying suspects. And we've been pretty successful in providing aid to them. We've got a virtual training center that's going to be opened up that we would welcome you all to come and check out. And that'll provide us with virtual training and scenario-based training on a large screen so that you can do a lot of different cool things. Our building is going to allow us to have a classroom and physical tactics that will hold up to 50 people. So we'll be able to do a lot of great training out there. We'll have a community meeting location. And then with regards to the rest of the community, we are aware and addressing issues ongoing at Avenue I and 10th Street West. There are a lot of things going on out there, and we're taking care of looking into those and making sure that we can get that area cleaned up. Next month, we're going to be focusing on Sierra Highway, including including partnering with existing human trafficking task force. And just to inform you all, we are also working, part of what we're doing with the PD is we're getting in touch with our faith-based community. And there was, over this past weekend, one of the churches who reached out to the women in our area that are being human trafficked and also stuck in prostitution. And they gave them a little bit of love, and they gave them an opportunity to come off the streets. So we're waiting for updates to hear how successful that was. We're continuing to address illegal party houses. There seems to be quite a few of those, so we're identifying those and getting those taken care of. And then lastly, we want to talk about when recently when we had the 14-year-old killed at formerly El Dorado Park, now Samaritan Spurs Park. We went out immediately and canvassed the area with surveys to talk to the community to see, if anyone would talk to us, what their concerns are. And we learned that that specific incident caused a decline in attendance at the local school because the majority of them do walk to school. So the parents were afraid of for the safety of their children. So we are working in connection with the Sheriff's Department and our faith-based community and other community members to have a plan when they come back to school in August to have people out there and make sure that they have safe passage to school and that they feel safe and that they know that we're out there trying to address issues. We're going to continue to stay engaged with that neighborhood and we'll go out at another time to see if we can get additional survey and additional intelligence or anything that can be shared with us. So for now, that is all the updates that we have, if you have any questions.
I do have a couple. Well, first of all, that's a long list. Wow.
It's a long list. We're busy over here.
Yeah, thank you for all your work on that. The one thing you were talking about, the station, excuse me if I said this wrong, stations or house that burnt out.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, I'm not educated on what the definition of a burnt out is.
So it's just any of our houses here in the community that may be vacant that ended up having some kind of fire.
Okay.
So if there's, if a homeless got inside and a fire has occurred, there's actually quite a few of them out here that we've done that with. So we're trying to find out who owns them, how do we get them taken care of? Can we rehab them and sell them? Can they come into receivership and then be resold? Or do they just need to be demolished and then the property can either go into receivership and revert to the city or be rebuilt or purchased or something like that.
Okay, great,
So.
thank you. And then you said you had 12 unlicensed businesses that you guys, what happens at this point? Do you cite them? They've come back and tried doing their business again?
So we try to work with them. So usually if somebody is operational, we'll try to work with them to get them into compliance. There's not a lot that takes to get a regular business into compliance. It's just coming in, filling out some paperwork. Our business licensing is handled outsourced by a company called HDL. And so we work with them. They just apply, get their fees paid. If they have been operating for a while, they may have some past due fees. And we'll try to get them into compliance.
And what kind of businesses were those that were?
I do not have that list, but I
Okay.
can find out for you.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I think is awesome, and I think it's fabulous that you guys are offering that simulator at the station for the public to come by. So thank you so much for doing that. I think that's a great thing for everyone to experience. I know I've done it, and it really puts a different light on what the deputies need to go through.
Right.
Now you said it's open. When is it going to be open to the public, and how can they make an appointment to come in and do that?
I don't have a specific date when we'll be able to accommodate the public for that, but I will make sure that we have an update for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh. Anyone else?
Those unlicensed businesses, are most of them regular businesses that just weren't complying with the license, or are some of them not appropriate businesses?
I believe they're probably just regular business licenses. I previously managed the business licensing section when I worked for our finance department. And it's typically people that don't even know that they need to get a business license. They're unaware. They have a great idea to open a business and they go and do that and don't know what the process is. So I'm assuming that the majority of them are just typical businesses, but I will find out if any of them were actual illegal businesses that shouldn't be operating in the city here.
So we don't know if any of those were really street vendors at this point?
No, I don't have a list how they were
Okay.
broken out, but I can find
If
out.
you can, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
But how did you find out they are unlicensed? How you find that you have a task force to go out throughout the city?
That's a great question. I will find out how we're doing that. I know that HDL does have some part of compliance where they can look at the sales tax data and cross-reference our business licensing list. And so if somebody is in the city collecting sales tax, they're emitting sales tax, they're clearly doing business here. But if they're not showing up on our business license list, then we know, oh, there's a problem here. So I don't know if they're using the data that HDL is providing in that manner, or if we actually have people out on the streets, going business to business. I know, again, previously when I was working in that area, we didn't have a compliance officer that had the ability to go out in the streets. It just wasn't a funded position. But now that we have a partnership with HDL, they do have an enforcement component. So I will double check and see if we're utilizing them in that role. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, we'll go back to our regular order and with the LA County Sheriffs.
Am I on here? Can you hear me? Good morning, Commissioners. Hope all is well. I'm Deputy Kit Groupie, assigned to Lancaster Sheriff Station. I know most of you. Commissioner Brown, just wanted to introduce myself. I'll be taking over for my partner, Deputy Green. Kind of transitioned into some different job positions. He's still there, but I'll be taking over the commission presentation. So glad to be here, and thanks for having me. I want to present the crime stats for up to the month of April 2024. I'm sorry? This here? Bear with me. I'm assuming I'm going to go forward, right? Okay. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. So we're going to start with the 1 year change from year to date, and we'll go with the numbers for 2024 year to date reported for the city of Lancaster. Criminal homicides we're at 4 total. If we go down to forcible rape, we are at 21. And let me go back to the criminal homicide portion. For the city, incorporated area of the city, it's 4. The unincorporated area, it's 1, for a total of 5. So in the city, that's a decrease at 71.43%. So now I'll move down to the forcible rape portion. I'm sorry about that. We're at a total of 21 for the city of Lancaster. Unincorporated is at 7 for a total of 28. For the 1 year change, the increase within the city of Lancaster is 10.53%. And the increase in the unincorporated area is at 75%. For robberies in the city of Lancaster, it's at 88. In the unincorporated area, it's 13. Within the city limits, that's an increase of 14.29%. And the unincorporated area, because it's significantly less, it's at 333% increase. Aggravated assaults are at a total of 322, with 36 in the unincorporated areas for a total of 358, with an increase at 9.15% within the city limits and an increase of 12.50% in the unincorporated area. Burglaries are a total of 232 within the city of Lancaster, 40 in the unincorporated areas, which is an increase in the city of 4.04% and a decrease in the unincorporated area at 31.03%. For a station total of a decrease at 3.20%. Larceny theft is at 449 within the city, 62 in the unincorporated for a total of 511, which gives you an increase of 14.54%, and an increase in the unincorporated areas at 12.73%. Grand theft auto is at 432 in the city and 164 in the unincorporated area for a total of 596. And that's actually a decrease within the city at 1.14%. However, it's an increase in the unincorporated area at 70.83%. Arson in the city is at 7. Unincorporated area 6, for a total of 13, which is a decrease in the city limits at 41.67%, and a decrease in the unincorporated area at 14.29%. And then Part 1 crimes in total in the city is at 1,555, unincorporated 329, which is an increase in the city at 5.85%. And in the unincorporated area, it's at 28.52%. Do you have any questions so far?
Question I have for you is, I believe I brought this up a couple of months ago, and maybe you weren't here, but I watched the stats that the Valley Press puts out, and they're completely different than the stats that are reported here. They do claim that they get their stats from the LASD, but I'm not sure, do they call your office and get those stats? And I'm just concerned about the residents getting the proper information on stats out there than what's maybe reported, because it's a huge difference.
Okay.
I was wondering if there was anything that you know about it, what is being reported differently to them versus what may be here, if anything?
I don't have an answer for you offhand right now, but I would be glad to look into that, contact the press.
Yeah.
And find out, and then present that to you at the next meeting or prior to.
That'd be perfect.
Okay.
Great.
So I will notate that and present that to the commission next meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. All right, and then we're gonna go to the month of April for our arrests. We're at a total of 385, where the year prior we were at 400, or the previous 12 months we were at 407 by April. And then we have the Part 1 crime hotspot areas, if you can see. Does anyone have any questions in regards to the hotspot areas?
Well, just curious if you have any observations, given the 1-year increase in overall Part 1 crimes, but the decrease in number of arrests. Is that staffing issues or?
I don't have an exact answer, and I mean, I can let the captain touch base on it, but I do know we are 100% countywide short-staffed. We have increased our calls for service, so I think that coupled with being short-staffed and our increased calls for service is taking that time away a little bit for the arrest portion. Captain Bartlett?
I can touch a little bit on it. I know there is an increase in reported crimes, and that's due to people reporting the crimes more, and also the ability that the technology that we have within the city now with the flock cameras and the shot spotter technology. We've seen a dramatic increase in those aggravated assaults because we're actually getting to the right location, finding the shell casings and documenting those crimes that are occurring. Or in some cases, I think we had mentioned in the past that there has been some cases where residents didn't even call 911 to some of those scenes that we responded to on the shot spotters, where it picked up shootings or shell casings and none of the residents called. So we are seeing a dramatic increase in taking those reports. And also that gives us an ability to follow up, because once we have casings, we can put those into a system that will ultimately down the road guide us or lead us to identifying the weapon or maybe suspects down the road. So.
Thank you, sir.
That's great. I don't know if maybe next month we could get a little more information on how that shot spotter's working, and I think it's good to get that message out there.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Oh,
Yes, sir.
briefly. Can you go back?
Yes, sir.
And I noticed that there's a hotspot, 11 o'clock, middle of nowhere.
Where at?
That 11 o'clock you're looking at, that the hotspot, red spot, and
Okay.
Yeah.
Way out there,
So
top left of the
where-
screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where, is it, there's something out there?
Yeah, that's,
Because I can really read it straight by the map, you know?
yeah, I'm looking at it here. The map portion is,
Is it that good?
Yeah,
what's the part one?
it'd be 50th and H something.
Yeah, it's 50th Street West,
Oh,
and it looks like it's gonna be south of Avenue H.
yes.
So it's not specifically telling me, but I'll get with the crime analyst and find out what's occurring there at 50th West and H. Believe that's
So
There's not a whole lot there.
Acreage lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will research it, and I will also add that to my notes as far as what the specifics are as to why that's a dense area out there in the middle of nowhere. Okay. And then these are the calls for service only hotspot areas. Did any one of the commission have any other questions in regards to the last map? Okay. And then here's our calls for service.
So do you have numbers on how many calls you received in the month of April?
I do not.
Okay. If we can maybe bring that, I'm just curious, I'm looking at both maps here, and when you see the calls only, it's, obviously you guys are getting a lot of calls, and I get that, you're short-staffed. Do you have a percentage of maybe how many of those calls are not calls that should be made to 911, the 911 calls that should not be necessarily made, or do you have anything like that, or is this really showing that there's a lot going on out there?
It's coupled. I mean, there's gonna be those calls for service as well, like you're mentioning.
Yeah.
And I will, once again, get with the crime analyst, and I'll go over that and get you that answer for the next meeting, as far as calls for service and what ones are actually panning out to be crimes with follow-up and time taken.
Yeah, it's just making sure, someone's power goes out and they're not calling 911 and the numbers are being reported here.
Right.
Thing. So it's just to kind of see, so we can see the difference on that. And just
Okay.
know how many calls you guys are getting that are not really meant to be called.
Understood. Okay.
Or those things, I mean, because this would be any call for any reason, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no specifics on the map as far as the hotspots and what the calls for service are. Obviously, there's more calls for service in specific areas. And if we go back, it seems as if a lot of the calls for service that are being placed are matching with the actual crime hotspot areas. So it seems as if where these calls are being placed, the crimes are occurring. So, but I will research with the crime analyst as to the breakdown of calls for service and whether or not they're, so to say, actual crimes occurring or people using the system for things other than emergencies. And like I said, one more time, that's the Part 1 crime hotspot areas. And then I'm gonna scroll to the right and actually do the calls only, and it seems like it's very similar and consistent with where the actual crimes are occurring.
So I can add a little bit to that, and I don't have specific by month, but I have year-to-date. So up to April 30th of 2024, we had 25,500 calls for service, and additionally 16,787 observations, which observations can encompass traffic stops, if you're flagged down by somebody in the field, everything like that, where it's not a call generated, but you generate the call yourself, for a total of 42,287, which averages out to about 10,000 calls a month. So, in total.
Deputy, I have a question if I may.
Yes.
I'm getting reports in our office about kind of an influx of youthful gangs moving up here to try to earn their stripes. I was just wondering if you could verify that, or is that just a misconception, or is that in fact happening, that there's youthful, the younger 20s gangs coming up here? And
I don't have an answer as far as youthful gangs coming up here. People moving up here, or people that live here have children, and some of them at school age level are involved in gangs. But as far as people coming up here to earn their stripes purposefully in the Antelope Valley, I haven't heard anything of that sort. I'd be glad to contact our Operation Safe Streets Bureau and consult with them in regards to that. But majority of the issues involving gang-related crimes are up here. They're not people that have just come up here to earn their stripes. These are people that seem to be in the valley, have been in the valley, and are actively gang members in the valley. If there's no other questions, that concludes my crime stat presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, I don't know if we have anyone from probation. Is Mr. Spolveda is enjoying his retirement now. Highway Patrol.
Good morning, everyone. We have seen an uptick in our collisions and crashes, as we'd like to call them up here. We don't call them accidents. But as far as we have seen an increase in our fatal injury and just overall crashes as just an effect of the behaviors we're watching on the roadways throughout. Granted, we don't patrol the city of Lancaster. We focus on all of the unincorporated areas, and we're kind of seeing it everywhere. My enforcement is increasing, but likewise, we're also still seeing the crashes increase with our fatal crashes are up 11% this year to date so far compared to last year. Injury crashes are up 5%, and then our driving under the influence related crashes are up almost 20%. I can say just from my own observations of what's going on, we're seeing a lot more of combinations, a lot more drug impairment, including PCP is reemerging. It's a little more prevalent than it used to be in years past, and in the many areas that I've been, as well as more meth-induced psychosis we're also seeing as well, including a lot more combative individuals. But I would attribute that to some of the DUI crashes that we're getting as an increase, as more of a prevalence of the drug use. But we're continuing to focus with some vigorous enforcement in different areas, and we're quelling one fire at a time before we move on to the next area. Other than that, as far as my personnel are continuing to push forward with community outreach, as well as other things, like on the 138, has been a hot spot for the towns of Little Rock and Pear Blossom, and we have focused a lot of enforcement on the 138. I do know from conversations that there is a desire to look again at the Safety Corridor project, which Caltrans canceled due to cost. I believe it was estimated to cost $10 billion to build that corridor. But as far as I believe they're looking at it again as a potential project in the future. And that's pretty much it. If there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer or address them.
On the collisions, that uptick that's been a steady trend the last few years. I feel like just anecdotally, people are driving a little wilder since the pandemic. Does the statistics bear that?
Yes, sure they do. And it kind of goes along the line with the broken window philosophy of, if someone can speed today, tomorrow, and throughout the next of the week, they'll continue to push the envelope on speed. All of the crashes we are seeing are because of bad decisions. Failure to stop at stop signs is very prevalent in the area here, or and either could be also failing to yield, whereas someone will misjudge time frames due to speed. They'll pull out in front of a vehicle, and unfortunately, they have very bad consequences in those aspects. And it could be haste or whatever it might be. But yes, that is a trend that we have been seeing since COVID. COVID kind of was Pandora's box for pretty much making the roadways the Wild Wild West. And like I said, all of our enforcement has been steadily increasing as well. It's trending upward. But we're just trying to modify behaviors modify driving behaviors on the roadways.
How about with teenage drivers, youth drivers? Are you seeing any increase with issues with them as well?
Not that's come to any of our attention in the office, and even I could say from my interactions in other offices. And my public information officers, Officer Church has also been actively involved with a lot of the high schools. So we haven't seen a big issue with the youth. It's the established drivers who are the problems that I've seen so far. Any other questions that I can answer? Or?
Can I just add really quickly? The PD is also working with CHP for a DUI campaign for alcohol and drug impairment. So we're working in conjunction. It's actually a grant that we received from the CHP. We got it last year, and we're going to continue on this year. We were awarded again. So we're out in the schools. You'll see us at the farmers market, Monday Night Bites. We're out there to assist and aid in getting the education out there with impairment with drugs and alcohol.
Well, seems like whatever you guys are doing with the youth is working. So good job. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, sir.
A pleasure.
District Attorney update.
Good morning. I have for you today statistics regarding our felony filings for Lancaster for the month of May. The chart that you see up there actually shows February through March as well as our yearly average. I discussed the last meeting our April statistics. So this month, last month for the month of May, with felony filings for arsons, we did not file any cases. The yearly average was 0. You can see that we did file 2 arson cases in April, but I believe that those were the only filings for the year so far in terms of arsons. With auto thefts, we filed 5 felony auto theft cases. The yearly average is 5. Burglaries, and that includes residential burglaries as well as commercial burglaries, we filed 13 felony cases, and our yearly average is 8. In the area of criminal threats, we filed 3 felony cases. The yearly average is 3, so that is consistent with our yearly average. Drug sales, we also filed 3 cases. The yearly average is 2. For domestic violence cases, our felony domestic violence cases, we filed 7 felonies. The yearly average is 5. For felony evading and felony hit and run, we filed 2 cases. Generally, our yearly average is 1. Felony assault, and that includes assaults with deadly weapon and other serious assaults, we filed 12 for the month of May. The yearly average is 15. Felony driving under the influence cases, we filed 6 felonies. The average is 1. Grand theft, we filed 17 felony cases, and the grand thefts, that also includes identity theft. The yearly average is 6. Illegal firearms and weapons, we filed 18 felony cases. 11 is our yearly average. Murders and attempted murders, we filed 3. And I don't have the breakdown between murder and attempted murder within that number, but the yearly average is 3. Robberies, we filed 3. The yearly average is 8. Sex crimes, that includes both adult and crimes committed against children, we filed 4 cases. 5 is the yearly average. Felony vandalism, we filed 6 cases. 3 is the average. Violations of protective order, that is the only area that includes misdemeanor filings. We filed 6 for the month of May. The yearly average is 12. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, what years are those yearly averages based on?
That is the young lady that puts this together for me. That is just the average from May 2023 to May 2024.
Okay, so year prior.
The question I have on here is, I think we mentioned at the last meeting, we were going to have additional numbers to show how many cases were presented versus how many cases were actually filed. Can we have that for next month?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
and I will make a note of that so I do not forget for
Okay.
the next meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
And so you're interested in the number of cases that are
Yeah.
actually presented to the office. So that may be difficult for me to break down. I know that we have this electronic filing system. It's called ESER. It's the Electronic Charge Evaluation Repository or something to that effect. Cases are uploaded into this system, and many cases are waiting for review from our Charge Evaluation Division. That's a separate section from the attorneys that I supervise here locally. There are, I would say right now, in our queue for filing, there are a couple hundred cases that have either been reviewed and filed, and they're waiting for our staff to process the cases. There are also probably, I would say, maybe 200 or 300 cases that have not yet been reviewed. So those are also cases that have been presented, but we haven't been able to take any action on them yet. And then we have custody cases that we have to review daily as people are arrested. So I think I can get for you the number of the number of custody cases that are presented that we've actually taken some action on, and possibly misdemeanors as well. I just have to see how I can break those numbers up for you, because there are a lot of different variables.
Okay. So, yeah, because I was just, I'm just kind of looking at here, and your sex crime, I'm assuming that's where we have the rape charges on in that one?
Yes, that would include forcible rape cases. It would include child molestation cases.
Right.
And just, with those cases, they're very difficult to prosecute. They take time to investigate.
Okay.
So many times what we'll see is a case may be presented and it's declined, but it's only declined for further investigation. The DAs assigned to those cases will request additional items of evidence. They will request further interviewing, and many times we're waiting for biological evidence to be examined, and reports, and so those take time. And that may be, I'm sure that's the reason why you're seeing higher numbers of sexual assaults and that are reported and fewer that are actually filed. Many of the cases also, we have, unidentified suspects. And so that would account for some of the numbers of reported compared to the number of cases that are actually filed.
Correct, yeah, because it's like even on arson, we have 13 reported year to date so far, but it looks like only 2 have been, obviously I don't have January's numbers on here, so it's just why those weren't, why it doesn't match. And I understand that there's the time frames and stuff like that, but it'd also be interesting to find out if there was any that got declined for out of your control kind of thing, or for whatever reason.
All right, I'll look into it to see what I can find
What you
out.
could find would be great.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Understand there's a lot of crimes that are not being pursued under the elected DA's various directives. If those directives, like for instance, crimes that are submitted now, if those directives were to disappear, say early December, would you be able to prosecute those that are being submitted now? Or is there, how does that work?
Every administration, I'll say every administration proceeds in a different manner. And I think that a new administration or a different administration might proceed differently on these cases that you're referring to.
But I guess my question is, when a decision is made whether to pursue a case or not, when is it too late to go back and perhaps file charges?
All right, I think I understand your question. So there's statute of limitations that really determines whether we can proceed on a case after, it's been declined initially. So for example, on a misdemeanor case, the statute of limitations is 1 year. On most felonies, it's 3 years. There are other cases with longer statutes of limitations. in some cases, it's 8 years. Murder, for example, there is no statute of limitations, so it really depends on the crime itself. So for the, I know under the district attorney's directives, we do not prosecute simple drug possession cases. Those are misdemeanors, and there's a 1 year statute of limitations on that. Any other questions?
With respect to what Dr. Gurian was talking about in terms of broken windows and the failure to prosecute lesser crimes, how does that impact your office, and how do you think it impacts criminal behavior in the Antelope Valley?
Ooh, that's kind of a loaded question. We do see many repeat offenders, and just in, my experience, my observations, I've seen increased criminality. The conduct starts to get worse as it goes on when there's no intervention early on in the process. And so, we're trying to combat that as much as we can with some of our diversion programs that we offer. For example, we may have a theft case that has been filed, but we see that there have been prior arrests for drug possession. Our office will seek a disposition in the case that includes some form of drug treatment so that it becomes either a term of probation or it's part of a diversion program where the individual is earning a dismissal of their case. So, we're trying to identify people that are in that, cycle of drug addiction and deal with it when we have other cases that we are able to file under the directives.
It's a tough problem, I agree, Ed. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, state legislative update, well, actually should just be legislative updates, and we'll start with our federal legislature, Congressman Garcia's office.
Well, good morning, commissioners. Thank you, as always, for all that you do. Greetings from Congressman Garcia. It is, right now he's back in DC, and I just want to share briefly that last month we were able to host a delegation from both Palmdale and Lancaster for National Police Week. And I think that the report back was that the Washington office team tried to pulled out all the stops, brought out the red carpet, and tried to make sure that our men and women felt honored and appreciated. So that was something that the congressman was very not only happy about, but really prioritized, being able to make sure our men and women felt honored and certainly thanked for what they do. So on the legislative front, the congressman was able to pass what's called the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs bill through, it went through appropriations. And what that does, it actually went through appropriations and passed through the House. And it would fully fund health care and benefits for our military men and women, but also funds to really address some of the quality of life issues on the base for the military families. As I've shared before, you know that the recruitment is down, morale is down. This is something that hopefully will help these men and women feel their value, and certainly the families of those who serve. So he was 100% behind that. He also, in June, earlier this month, he sponsored H.R. 8282, which is the Illegitimate Court Contractions Act, or ICCA. Everything's an acronym in our business. In light of what's happening with the divide between some of our legislators with Israel and Hamas, there's been an attempt to bring criminal charges against our friends in Israel, Netanyahu in particular. This bill would really protect those individuals and those Americans who are allies and who are trying to do what's right. It's kind of a common sense thing. I think there was a time in my life I would thought, why would we even need something like this? But unfortunately, it's the reality, and that did pass the House, and it had some good bipartisan support on that. And earlier this month, he also appointed 13 men and women, young ladies and men, to the academies. And they had a great reception for that. And I got to go to a lot of the high school promotion graduations, and these are some extraordinary people. And I always tell the Antelope Valley Press and anyone who'll listen, please highlight these folks, because we're always hearing about the young folks that are doing foolish things, but there's just a lot of young people that are really extraordinary. And this group of nominees are going to be world changers, and they're going to serve us in the various academies they've chosen. And then lastly, he is, and I shared with this last meeting we had, the bill that he wrote for wildfires. And we're just about on that threshold. We're about to see the Antelope Valley go up in flames again because of wildfires. But this passed the House, and there's two bills, but one of them is this using AI to detect early detection of some of the wildfires in some of the more remote areas. If you, just like in the Western Valley out towards Lake Hughes and everything, using the drones to be able to detect early on those fires in areas where we can't get our firefighters on the ground right away, but be able to assess where that fire's starting. So it's using that technology and really trying to prevent not only damage to the forests, but also property damage, which I think I shared with you, is also leading to insurance companies leading our company, because they've taken huge losses with the property damage between the fires and the floods. So that's impacting our economy in that regard as well. So that is it for me, unless you have any questions. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Senator Wilkes' office.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Thomas Marino from State Senator Scott Wilkes' office. I'll go ahead and start on wildfires. So Senator Wilkes' bill SB 1004, his wildfire settlement tax exemption bill, has passed through the Senate and is now sitting in the Appropriations Committee, or in the Assembly. This bill will allow the state to exempt wildfire taxed settlements from state taxes. It's great going from 2020 all the way on through 2034. His other two bills, big bills that have passed, are his SB 1359, which is the illegal dumping bill. This bill did have its teeth amended out of it in appropriations. It is no longer in the bill that it will become a misdemeanor to illegally dump on private property, but it will still be a hefty fine in it as well. So that stayed in, but the misdemeanor part is unfortunately out of the bill. His CSU study bill did not pass through the Senate Appropriations Committee. It is just going to be held and not sent to the Assembly. The other big bill that has passed through the Senate for us is his high quality, high volume spay and neuter certification program. This bill will create the nation's first high quality, high volume spay and neuter certification program through UC Davis's School of Veterinary Sciences. It'll hopefully ease the epidemic that we have right now of stray animals, and hopefully save future ones from euthanasia and anything else on that matter. A couple of big bills to do with criminal justice. SB 1365, or no, not that one, SB 1253, which will require each person moving into the state with firearms to acquire a fire safety certification within 120 days. A violation of this will be a misdemeanor. That passed off the Assembly floor 26-9 with Senator Wilk opposing. This bill is now going to be referred in the Assembly. Portofino's SB 1160. This bill will expands an enhanced misdemeanor to persons who openly carry a handgun and unexpended ammunition while they are not listed with the Department of Justice as the owner of that firearm. This bill was held, luckily, and will not be going forward. The other big bill is a bill that Senator Wilk co-authored with Senator Grove, SB 1414. This requires registration as a sex offender to any person who is convicted of soliciting or agreeing to engage in prostitution with a minor under the age of 16 if they are 10 or more years older on or after January 1st of 2025. This has passed out of the Senate 36-0 and is now waiting in the Assembly. Any questions?
What's happening with the efforts to repeal portions of Prop 47.
I don't have the latest on that. I could go ahead and get that for the next meeting or get it to you separately.
Okay.
right,
Yeah,
great.
if you could speak to that, and I know it's coming up and it'll be before the end of session, but I know there's some watered down attempts to keep it off the ballot, and I think it'd be good to have the public information out there about what's going on.
Okay, yeah, I could definitely talk to our Sacramento team and get that for you. All right, anything else? All right, thank you guys.
That's it. Thanks. Assemblymember Lackey's office.
Good morning, everybody. As you know, Prop 47 is a big deal right now in the Assembly. The legislative solution to Prop 47 is a retail theft bill package that only addresses some of the issues. In an attempt to try and deceive California voters, the supermajority is considering adding language at the last minute that would undermine the will of the voters. Their proposed poison pill would make their entire retail theft package inoperable should the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act pass in November. There are several publications of the Assemblyman and the Public Safety Commission speaking about that. I can send that over to you if you'd like that. As far as the Assemblyman's bills, several of the Assemblyman's bills were unfortunately killed in appropriations, but of the 7 that are left, I wanted to note a couple of them that have to do with public safety. AB 2645 seeks to include special alerts to justifiable cause for transportation agencies to share license plate reading data from toll lanes with California Highway Patrol and law enforcement agency that requested the Amber Alert, Ebony Alert, Feather Alert, including time and location of the vehicle that it was identified at. So if they pass through any toll locations outside of the original district that they were reported in, those districts would communicate with each other. AB 2730, this would allow sexual assault forensic examination programs to find a physician in any specialty to consult or oversee standard operating procedures and the furnishing of medications. Secondly, it prevents the disqualification of testimony of qualified healthcare professionals who are experts in sexual assault forensic exams based on misinterpretation of the current penal code. And then AB 3083 will ensure that subjects of domestic violence restraining orders are surrendering all firearms and will reduce the incidence of gun violence and murder of the victims of domestic violence. So that I have some other bills that are listed here, but they weren't as pressing as these. I can name them out to you and we can get you some information on them later. AB 1973, that has to do with personal income and corporate tax in relation to the 2020 Bobcat fire. The Assemblyman was pushing to keep that also off of the taxes for them because of the issues that they had and all of the money that they will be getting for that. AB 2474 proposes 3 changes to the CERL to reflect best practices and used across systems. AB 3182 will allow the San Bernardino County to use its land and park dollars, so that has nothing to do with here, but that is one of them. And then AB 3197 would allow county elections officials to modernize local election procedures by authorizing the creation of a standardized format for all petitions circulated within the county, for which the county elections official provides signature verification services and streamlining the ability for county elections officials to provide online candidate statements for local nonpartisan elective offices within that county. So that's all I have for today. Is there any questions?
Thanks very much. Okay, moving on to public business from the floor, non-agendized items.
This is the time to address the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission on non-agendized matters. Speaker cards can be found on the back table of the council chambers. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each unless a different time limit is announced. State law prohibits the commission from taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one speaker card, David Paul.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good morning. This always happens. I come and I hear all this stuff, and the enthusiasm I have to contribute kind of diminishes because I realize what we're up against. At the same time, I appreciate how hard everyone in this community and in this room is trying to fix problems. This is what I know for sure. And this is where perhaps my white privilege has been a disqualifier through the years because, you know, I grew up in a world that was okay. And it's not that I'm naive about crime or bad things that happen. It's just that there was something to look up to within our country. You know, we have Flag Day coming up in a couple days, and we pledge allegiance to the flag that stands for the republic that we live in, that we all must defend and protect. Last night, the mayor talked about, before he leaves office, he's going to form a militia because there are not provisions within the law to take care of the things that disgust you most. You know, Dr. Guerin, 15 years ago, the city did a broken windows thing, so everybody knows about that. But there just isn't enforcement power for anything. And as I drive around, now it's harder for me to park. I have disabled plates on my car. I go to Walmart or some other store, and all the handicap spots are taken, and I watch people pull in there that are not handicapped. And this is an area where you could actually stand up for the old and the sick and the disabled, but we can't do that either. And so I think about the people that didn't have that benefit that I had of believing in the sanctity and the greatness of the United States of America and why we pledge allegiance to the flag that represents the republic. So Eisenhower in 1954 put the under God in the pledge. That wasn't in there before. And there's a lot of religious conflicts that come from trying to impose morality in the law, and it's very confusing. So I won't do it right now, but I'm reworking the last part of the pledge that can help people feel like it's true that the United States stands for something and we're all in this together. That's the one thing we can have in common, is being Americans, and I'm just so sad that's gone from our psyche. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. That was our only speaker card. Does anybody else wish to address the commission?
How about now? Good?
Yes.
Real quick, an additional update, because my crime analyst is awesome. The hot spot that Commissioner Herr had asked about way out on the west side is actually at 50th Street West and Avenue H8. And there was 2 residential burglaries reported at the same residence. So that's what that red spot is notating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And pass on our appreciation. Okay, we're into commissioner comments. Commissioner McCracken.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to bring up, especially for the departments here, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. But also know we're here for you guys. So if there's anything that you need from us, anything we need to do to nudge the city to get some help for you, it's not only just a platform to give us our statistics, but if you have issues that you need our assistance with, please bring it up. We don't always have the answers. We can at least start a healthy conversation about it and see how we can get you guys the help that you need. Okay?
Commissioner Herr? Okay. I'll say a couple. I'd say, based on kind of the discussion we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it might be a good idea for our public safety department, our local law enforcement, maybe take a look at some of those crimes that will still be under the statute of limitations, And should there hopefully be a change in those DA directives come December, be prepared to represent or remind of some of the serious ones that, that were ignored. I do also want to say again, joining Commissioner Crowder, of course, appreciating all of you, and including our deputy district attorneys. You know, the concerns we bring up have to do with the elected DA's policies. We know that those of you in our local offices here in our community are working very hard to keep us safe, and we appreciate that. I do want to hear more about the Prop 47 issues. Those are very important to our residents and business owners out here, and goes to what Dr. Gearing spoke of on the broken windows. Is, you know, we ignore those smaller crimes and they blossom into bigger crimes. Folks that start off shoplifting and get away with it tend to go into other crimes. You know, and I say with the broken windows, you know, you look at how New York was in the 1980s versus when Giuliani got in and adopted broken windows philosophy in law enforcement, and it was like night and day. And now we see what's happening to our major cities, and creeping from there into our small and mid-sized towns. So I think those are all good things to keep in mind. With that, if nobody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Dr. Brown, second by Commissioner Hurd. Any objection to adjourning?